Hello, and welcome to a brief presentation from the State and National Registers of Historic Places for the proposed Forest Heights Historic District. My name is Jennifer Walkowski. I'm the Historic Preservation Program Analyst for the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. The New York State and National Registers of Historic Places are the official lists of properties significant in state and national history. Established by the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, the National Register of Historic Places is the official list of historic properties that have been recognized as significant in American history, architecture, archaeology, engineering, or culture. The New York State Register was established in 1980. The Division for Historic Preservation of the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, also known as the State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO, coordinates the National Register program in New York State as well as the parallel State Register program. What types of resources are included in the National Register? It includes buildings, structures, objects, sites, and historic districts. What the National Register is. It's a collaboration between the property owner or the project sponsor and the New York State Historic Preservation Office. Designation is largely honorific. It's a gateway to access the state homeowner tax credit and/or the state and federal commercial historic rehabilitation tax credits. It's also a gateway for not-for-profit organizations and municipalities to apply for New York State historic preservation grants. Other grants, also requiring listing, may be available through other public and private sources. The National Register is an important land use management tool to assist local governments in decision-making regarding the built environment, and it's a tool to help promote appreciation for historic resources. What the National Register is not. It does not restrict property owners' ability to remodel, alter, paint, manage, subdivide, sell, or even demolish a National Register listed building if using the property owner's own funds. It's not a local historic district. It does not require any additional level of project review by a local preservation board. And if they're using their state or federal funding, such as a tax credit, or if state or federal permitting is required, proposed alterations may be reviewed by SHPO staff for National Register listed and National Register eligible properties. Environmental review is a planning process that helps protect New York's historic cultural resources from the potential impacts of projects that are funded, licensed, or approved by state or federal agencies. Under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act and Section 14.09 of the New York State Historic Preservation Act, the SHPO's role in the review process is to ensure that effects or impacts on eligible or listed properties are considered and avoided or mitigated during the project planning process. In addition, the SHPO advises local communities on local preservation or environmental reviews upon request under the provisions of the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Project review is conducted in two stages. First, the Survey and National Register Unit assesses a property to determine whether it is listed in the New York State or National Register of Historic Places. If not, it is evaluated to determine whether it meets the criteria to be included in the registers. If listed or determined eligible for listing, then the second stage of the review is undertaken, where the project is reviewed by the technical unit. Please note, if your project does not involve state or federal funding, licensing, or permitting, it does not need to be reviewed by the SHPO. Privately funded projects are not subject to review. How do we determine eligibility? In a nutshell, it equals a formula: significance plus integrity equals eligibility. The National Register criteria for evaluation are used to evaluate significance. The quality of significance in American history, architecture, archaeology, engineering, and culture is present in resources that possess integrity and, criterion A, properties that are associated with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of our history, or, criterion B, properties that are associated with the lives of significant persons in our past, or criterion C, properties that embody the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction, or that represent the work of a master, or that possess high artistic values, or that represent a significant and distinguishable entity whose components may lack individual distinction, or criterion D, properties that have yielded or may be likely to yield information important in history or prehistory, typically archaeology. When assessing areas of integrity, we look at 7 different factors that include location, setting, design, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association. A property must retain sufficient integrity in at least 4 of these areas, including feeling and association. Evaluation of integrity often depends upon the local context and the relative rarity of the resource type. What is a historic district? A historic district is a group of buildings, structures, and sites that are significant for their historical and physical relationships to each other. Properties in districts are not usually significant individually, but gain meaning from their proximity and association as a collection. A district may include any number of properties. It can be an entire municipality, a neighborhood, an area of related development, a complex of buildings, etc. How do we determine National Register boundaries? In addition to establishing the significance and integrity of a property, the physical location and extent of the property or district are defined as part of the documentation. Determination of boundaries is a judgment based on the nature of the property's significance, physical and architectural integrity, and physical setting. It's developed during the research stage and confirmed through field examination. Here's a map showing the proposed boundaries for the Forest Heights Historic District. You'll note it encompasses properties along Forest Avenue, Prather Avenue, and Prospect Street, just south of Washington Street. How did this project originate? So this project is sponsored by the city and the Jamestown Renaissance Corporation, or the JRC. In recent years, the JRC has been working with the New York SHPO to identify and nominate several historic districts in Jamestown to the state and national registers, including the Downtown Jamestown Historic District and the Lakeview Avenue Historic District. The goal of the JRC is to allow property owners to access historic preservation tax credit programs. The Forest Heights project traces its origins to a thorough historic resources survey undertaken in the 1990s, which identified key areas of the city for potential historic districts, including a small area of Forest Heights. While this survey languished for over a decade, improvements to the historic preservation tax credit programs, along with local community interest, spurred the JRC to move forward with the Forest Heights District, and in early 2018, they engaged a historic preservation consultant to undertake the work. They were awarded a grant in 2018 to update the survey information and move the nomination forward. The JRC continued to pursue nomination of this proposed historic district to the state and national registers, working with the consultant and the SHPO. A nomination draft, building on the information from the survey work, was prepared and has been submitted and is currently slated for review at the June 2020 State Review Board meeting. The Forest Heights Historic District is the culmination of what has been a multi-year effort by numerous individuals and organizations from the Jamestown community. A little bit of history on the Forest Heights Historic District. It reflects the growth of the area south of downtown Jamestown, with patterns of development ranging from early rural estates through streetcar-oriented residential suburbs that emerged in the late 19th and early 20th century. During the district's period of significance, between circa 1840 and 1936, Jamestown grew from a small rural frontier village into a booming industrial city. While most development occurred north of the river, a few landowners established themselves on the south side. Starting in the 1840s, wealthy residents of Jamestown built sizable estates in Forest Heights, where they could situate their elegant mansions to take advantage of sweeping views and fresh air. A few residents of more modest means also moved to the southern outskirts, where they built small vernacular farmhouses and a handful of more architecturally ambitious suburban houses. The pace of development picked up dramatically after 1884, when the city's new horse-drawn streetcars began traveling on a loop that traversed Brooklyn Square, just north of the district, making the area more accessible. In 1903, the inauguration of an electric streetcar line through the Forest Heights neighborhood made it even easier for commuters to live south of the district, causing real estate developers to subdivide large properties into small lots lined by similar houses. The Forest Heights Historic District contains nearly 200 historic resources. Primarily, these are residences, but it also includes a park. Historic development encompasses 1840-era suburban mansions to the 1930s-era middle-class streetcar-era suburban expansion. A draft of the National Register nomination will soon be available to read on our website, which is listed here on this slide. It's also parks.ny.gov/SHPO, SHPO/National Register/nominations. Frequently asked questions. Does this mean I won't be able to make changes to my home or building? Simply put, no. The National Register does not restrict what private property owners can do with their properties. In fact, as long as state and federal funding or permits are not being used, a property owner can demolish a building that is listed in the National Register. Protection only exists when state and/or federal money and/or permitting is involved in a project. The most common such occurrence is when the Department of Transportation is reconstructing or widening a roadway. If you choose to take advantage of the tax credit programs, the State Historic Preservation Office will have to review your proposed work. If you do not choose to utilize this financial incentive, the state does not review changes to your property. Must owners of listed buildings open their buildings to the public? No, there's absolutely no requirement to open register-listed properties to the public. Can an owner object to having his or her property listed on the registers? Yes. For properties with multiple owners, such as districts, objections only count toward the listing of the district as a whole. No one owner can exempt himself or herself from listing in a district by means of an objection. Although the state register does not recognize owner objections, it is the policy of the SHPO to avoid listings with significant objections and to work with nomination sponsors and communities to provide information and education about the register's programs. Owners who wish to object must provide a written, notarized objection to the SHPO prior to the State Review Board meeting on June 11, 2020. Will a property owner be able to leave his property to his children or anyone else he or she wishes? Yes. Listing on the registers in no way affects the transfer of property from one owner to another. Will listing on the state and national registers, either individually or in a historic district, affect local property taxes or zoning? No. Listing has no direct bearing on any of these local actions. We're going to start with a brief overview of the historic preservation tax credit programs. There are two tax credit programs available. There's a New York State Historic Homeownership Rehabilitation Tax Credit Program, and also the New York State and Federal Commercial Rehabilitation Tax Credit Program. For homeowners, the New York State Historic Homeowner Tax Credit Program provides tax credits on your New York State income tax worth 20% of qualified expenditures. SHPO staff review proposed work and help property owners determine the best approaches to rehabilitation objectives. In general, projects should strive to retain and repair original historic materials. Proposed work is reviewed according to the Secretary of the Interior's standards for rehabilitation. For income-producing properties, such as commercial buildings or apartment buildings, they can take advantage of both the state and federal rehab tax credit programs. The state commercial tax credit is used in conjunction with the federal tax credit. Each provides tax credits worth 20% of qualified rehabilitation expenditures. Together, the federal and state programs offset up to 40% of QREs, with the state tax credit capped at $5 million. The work performed must meet the federal preservation standards as established by the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation and be approved by the National Park Service, or NPS. SHPO staff review projects and work with property owners to determine the best approaches for rehabilitation objectives. In general, projects should strive to retain and repair original historic materials. So what buildings qualify for these programs? Buildings that are listed individually on the state and national registers, buildings that are listed in a state or national register historic district, buildings that are located in a local historic district which has been certified by the National Park Service, or individual buildings in historic districts that are eligible for the registers or in the process of listing. For the New York State Historic Homeownership Tax Credit Program, you must own and live in the house. The total project cost must exceed $5,000. At least 5% of the project's expenditures must be for the exterior of the house. Work needs to be approved by the SHPO before you begin. The property must be located in an eligible census tract, and the credit is refundable for eligible incomes. What types of projects qualify? Things like interior and exterior finishes, painting and plaster work, roof repair and replacement, electrical wiring and fixtures, plumbing and plumbing fixtures, stairs, window and door repair, masonry repairs, reconstruction of a missing historic porch. Should note that the application is available on our website, which is parks.ny.gov/SHIPPO/tax-credit-programs. What types of projects do not qualify for this program? Things like appliances, refrigerators, window air conditioning units, new construction costs, fencing and landscape work, paving, sidewalks, work performed in rental units if the building is a multi-family, multi-unit building, and work performed outside the building footprint. Now, for income-producing properties, there's a 20% federal commercial rehabilitation tax credit coupled with a 20% New York State commercial rehabilitation tax credit for a total of 40% in investment tax credit for historic commercial properties. Comprehensive information, including eligibility requirements, are found on the National Park Service website, which is www.nps.gov/tax-incentives.htm. And please contact your SHIPPO representative for further guidance on this program. Thank you for watching. If you have questions, please feel free to give us a call or contact us. My name is Jennifer Walkowski. If you have questions on the National Register nomination, you can contact me. If you have homeowner tax credit questions, you can talk to Fran Stern. With commercial tax credit questions, you can talk to Sloan below. Thank you and have a good day.